All right, in a divisive decision, Washington Supreme Court just tossed out the state's drug possession law.
The 5-4 ruling fell in favor of a woman who claimed drugs found in her jean pocket belonged to a friend she borrowed the pants from.
Yeah, the court says the current policy violates due process. But our next guest says the move will allow violent criminals to go free. Seattle radio host Jason Rantz joins us now. Good morning, Jason. Let's walk through this if we can. We got to dive into a little bit of legalese. It's just sort of how it goes on these cases. So the the Washington Supreme Court has said that the law of possession in Washington doesn't work because it doesn't require knowledge. In other words, the criminal must know they possess something illegal on their control or within their control. And Washington's didn't have that. Why do you see this as such a problem and one that might turn criminals free?
Well, because it scrapped the entire statute that covers possession of an illicit substance, which means because an officer can't in the moment prove that the person knew that they had this substance on them, be it heroin or cocaine or whatever, they're not even able to make an arrest. And so all across Washington state, law enforcement agencies have said, yeah, we're going to stop not only making arrests here, but we're not going to confiscate any of the drugs, basically making an absurd argument, because who among us hasn't reached into our pockets and pulled out an 8-ball of cocaine? We very clearly understand that for the vast majority of these cases, there was, of course, intent. So to prove intent that you had knowledge of this is going to be very difficult, if not impossible, which is why we're just no longer enforcing the law, effectively legalizing the possession of drugs.
Wow. The prosecuting attorney in Washington had this to say about the ruling. The legislature should act with a sense of urgency to add the necessary elements to make the statute constitutional this session and not leave a defective statute on the books. How long could this be where effectively, carrying drugs and even committing crimes with drugs is something the police can't do anything about?
Yeah, unfortunately, this can last years because right now the only fix is a legislative fix. They've already passed the deadline to create new bills in our part-time state legislature. And at the exact same time, we have a huge portion of the Democratic Party within the House and the Senate who are actively trying to pass a bill that would legalize the personal possession of drugs. And so the only way realistically this is going to get changed is if we elect some better representatives from the Republican side or the Democrat side that actually has the stomach to make this kind of change.
So as a radio host, you get a pretty good feel for how people are reacting to these kinds of ideas and policies. How do the people in Seattle feel about this? I mean, they've had just quite a year with riots and now this, which could really, raise the violent criminal rates in the city. Is this how they want to live?
So Seattle versus the rest of Washington state is a little bit different. So Seattleites are probably celebrating this, and we've seen a lot of activists within the community saying this is good news because our drug laws disproportionately impact people of color, which the data actually doesn't back the way that they think. But the biggest problem, and when this happened, I got no less than a dozen text messages and emails coming from law enforcement across the state. The problem is this this ruling is retroactive, which means all of the people who got popped for possession, and in many cases, especially in Seattle, when you've got an actual drug dealer who actually got caught, well, they usually downgrade those into personal possession because it makes it much easier to prove and you get through the system much faster. So in theory, all of those people are going to be released from prison. And then, of course, if you have more serious felony charges against someone, a judge looks at their history. And if they had a previous, let's say they're just a hardcore criminal who also got popped for drug possession, well, you add years to that sentence. So now that has to be resentenced under this ruling.
We'll have to see how this plays out both in the Washington state legislature and in the criminal justice system there in Washington. Jason, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.